For 200 years, the planet of Illustra had forgotten the face of man. Its skies were ruled by the soft glow of twin moons, and its cities were filled only with women. They called themselves the Daughters of Dawn, a proud, intelligent, and beautiful race who once served beside men, until the Great Plague took every male away. Without men, they learned to survive, to grow food, build machines, and guard their hearts from memories. But deep inside, their blood remembered the warmth of another voice, another heartbeat, another sin of strength that once walked beside them. Commander Elira stood on the balcony of the Sky Citadel, her silver hair shining under the night wind. Her world was peaceful, yet empty. Every night, she felt the same dream, a shadow of a man standing in the rain, calling her name. She had never met a man, yet she knew his face as if her soul had carved it. Her scientists said the dream was a genetic echo, a memory of their ancestors. But Elira knew better. Something ancient was moving again beyond the stars. Far across the void, on a lonely human research ship named Odyssey, Captain Ethan Ward woke to a transmission. It wasn't human, but it spoke English. "Come home," the message said, soft like a whisper from a lover's lips. Ethan froze, his pulse racing. The signal came from coordinates outside human space, a dead sector never mapped by Earth Command. The AI warned him not to go, but curiosity and something deeper pulled him toward it. As Odyssey entered Illustra's orbit, alarms screamed. Energy readings were off the charts. Dozens of sleek, crystal blue ships surrounded him, each glowing with feminine figures watching from within. A voice came through, calm, commanding, and heartbreakingly beautiful. "Identify yourself, stranger of the stars." Ethan took a deep breath. "My name is Captain Ethan Ward. I'm human." A silence followed. Then a tremor ran through their fleet, as if the word human awoke a forgotten fire. Commander Elira whispered to herself. After 2 centuries, they have returned. The air in the great hall was heavy with silence. Every eye was fixed on Ethan, the first man they had seen in 200 years. He could feel their fear and their curiosity mixing like 2 storms meeting in the sky. Commander Elira stood only a few steps away, her hand resting on the hilt of her crystal sword. No one dared to breathe. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice trembled. "I came here in peace," he said. "I don't mean to harm anyone." The words sounded small in such a grand place. The women around him whispered among themselves. Their eyes glowed faintly with blue light, as if they carried energy inside their bodies instead of blood. Elira raised her hand, and the room fell silent again. "Peace is a word spoken by conquerors before they strike," she said softly. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Ethan felt her gaze cutting through his soul. "I'm not a conqueror," he answered quietly. "I am only a traveler." She studied him for a long moment before turning to her counsel. "Prepare the isolation chamber," she commanded. The guards surrounded Ethan at once, their weapons glowing with silver light. He didn't resist. He knew fear would only make things worse. As they led him away, Elira's eyes followed him, filled with questions she couldn't voice. The isolation chamber was a transparent cell floating in a pool of light. Ethan sat there, trying to understand what kind of world he had entered. The air was sweet but cold. Strange runes glowed on the walls, scanning his body and mind. He realized he wasn't just being watched, he was being studied. From behind a glass screen, Elira and her chief scientist, Dr. Navarra, observed him. "He is not infected," Navarra said. "No trace of the old male virus." Elira frowned. "Then it's true. The disease that wiped them out did not destroy the species, only this world." Navarra looked at her commander carefully. "What will you do with him?" Elira's voice was quiet but firm. "I don't know yet." Later that night, Elira returned alone to the chamber. Ethan was sitting on the floor, staring at the stars through the glass roof. When he saw her reflection, he stood. "Commander," he said politely, "have I done something wrong?" She shook her head slowly. "You've done something impossible," she said. You came back. He didn't understand. She walked closer to the barrier between them. 200 years ago, she began, our ancestors destroyed the last ship of men to save this planet from the plague. We believed it was mercy, but it was also fear. Ethan listened carefully, his heart heavy. So you thought men were the danger? Elira nodded. We built a world of balance and order, but without men, that balance broke. Our births began to slow, our emotions faded, our songs lost their warmth. Her voice trembled slightly. Our world is dying quietly, and no machine can save what was lost. For the first time, Ethan saw sadness behind her strength. He placed his hand against the glass. Maybe I was sent here for a reason, he said softly. Elira looked at his hand, her eyes widening as if drawn by instinct. Her own hand rose slowly, resting on the other side of the glass. For one heartbeat, their palms aligned. The chamber lights flickered, energy sensors spiked. Dr. Navarra's voice echoed from the control room. Commander, his touch is triggering a life pulse reaction. The system is reading emotional resonance off the charts. Elira pulled her hand back, shocked. What does that mean? She asked. It means, Navarra said slowly, your cells recognized him. Elira turned to Ethan, her eyes wide with realization. You carry the same life code as our ancestors. Ethan frowned. You mean I'm compatible? Navarra nodded. More than compatible. You may be the key to restarting what we lost. The words sent waves of whispers through the observation decks. Soldiers, scientists, and priests watching from behind glass suddenly bowed their heads. For the first time in centuries, hope had returned to Illustra. But hope also brings fear. In the shadowed corridors of the Citadel, a secret group of high priests gathered. They called themselves the Circle of Purity. To them, the return of a man was not salvation but corruption. The male curse must never rise again, their leader hissed. If the commander grows weak, we will do what must be done. Meanwhile, Ethan was moved to a private garden surrounded by glowing trees. Elira came to see him often, asking questions about Earth, about history, about the way men once lived. He told her stories of oceans, storms, laughter, and loss. She listened with wonder, her walls slowly falling. Sometimes she laughed quietly, a sound rare and fragile. Each day, the people of Illustra watched their commander change. Her voice grew warmer, her eyes softer, her dreams brighter. But in the depths of the city, the Circle of Purity prepared a different plan. They had waited 2 centuries to keep Illustra untouched by men. And now, they would kill the last one before dawn. Night fell quietly over the shining towers of Illustra. The city looked peaceful from above, yet beneath its glass bridges and glowing gardens, whispers of fear spread like fire. The people spoke of the man who came from the stars. Some called him a savior, others called him a curse. Inside her private chamber, Commander Elira couldn't sleep. The stars outside her window pulsed faintly, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat. She tried to push the thoughts away, but Ethan's voice still echoed in her mind. The way he spoke of the sea, of music, of laughter, all things their world had forgotten. He made her feel alive in a way no one ever had, and that frightened her more than any war. Down in the lower sanctums, the Circle of Purity met in the dark. Their leader, High Priestess Vara, stood before a pool of glowing water. Reflected in its surface was Ethan's face, captured from the surveillance screens. This creature is not salvation, Vara whispered coldly. He is temptation made flesh. Around her, the other priestesses bowed. If the commander hesitates, we act, Vara said. No man will ever rule Illustra again. At dawn, Elira met Ethan in the sky garden. The air shimmered with gold light and the scent of crystal flowers. He smiled when he saw her. You look tired, he said gently. She gave a soft laugh. I forgot how exhausting leadership can be when the heart starts to argue with the mind. Ethan looked at her with quiet warmth. You're not alone in that, he said. Their conversation was interrupted by Dr. Navarra, who ran toward them holding a holographic tablet. Commander, she said breathlessly. "We found something." Elira turned sharply. "What is it?" "The records of the Great Plague," Navarra answered. "They're false." Ethan frowned. "False? What do you mean?" Navarra projected the data. Images, logs, and files sealed for 2 centuries. "The virus that wiped out men, it was never a disease," she said. "It was a weapon." Elira's eyes widened. "A weapon? From where?" Navarra hesitated. "From here, Commander," she whispered. "Our ancestors created it." The truth hit like thunder. The Daughters of Dawn had destroyed their own kind to preserve their power, and the Circle of Purity had guarded that lie for generations. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. "So they erased half their species and called it survival," he said quietly. Elira felt her stomach twist with guilt and rage. "No more lies," she said. "The people deserve the truth." But before she could act, the chamber lights flickered. Security alarms wailed. An explosion shook the tower. The sound echoed through the city, deep, violent, and final. Smoke filled the garden. Guards rushed in, shouting, "Commander, it's an attack. Internal sabotage." Ethan grabbed Elira's arm, pulling her behind a shattered pillar. Flames burned around them. Through the smoke, figures in white cloaks appeared, their eyes glowing red. "The circle," Elira whispered. They carried energy blades shaped like crescents, ancient symbols of judgment. Vara stepped forward, her voice cold as steel. "You have betrayed the vow of purity, Elira," she said. "You brought corruption into our world." Elira stood tall, despite the chaos. "I brought life," she answered, "and you will not destroy it again." Vara raised her blade. "The male curse must end," she declared. Ethan moved before Elira could stop him. "If you want to kill someone," he said, "start with me." The circle's weapons lit with deadly light. But before they could strike, the Citadel's defense system activated automatically. Blinding beams of blue energy filled the air, forcing everyone to scatter. Elira grabbed Ethan's hand and ran through the smoke. They raced through corridors collapsing around them. Guards fought against the fanatics, their weapons clashing in sparks of light. The once peaceful city had turned into a battlefield. When they finally reached a hidden lift deep beneath the palace, Elira slammed her hand on the control panel. The doors closed, sealing them inside. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Ethan looked at her, his face covered in dust. "You saved me," he said softly. She met his gaze. "No," she whispered. "You saved us." The lift descended into darkness. Only the hum of ancient machinery filled the air. At last, they emerged in a forgotten chamber buried under the city. A huge metallic gate stood before them, covered in strange markings. Elira touched the symbols with trembling fingers. "This place was built before the Purity era," she said. Ethan wiped the dust from a plaque, revealing faded words, Project Genesis. He looked at her in disbelief. "What is this?" Elira's voice shook as she answered. "It's where the first men were born on Elistra." They stared at each other as the ancient doors began to glow. The air vibrated with power. Behind that gate, the truth of humanity's connection to Elistra waited, and both of them knew that opening it would change everything. Far above them, the city burned, and the Circle of Purity swore they would find and destroy them before the secret of Genesis was revealed. The ground trembled softly under their feet. Dust drifted down from the ancient ceiling as the great metal gate began to awaken. Faint blue lines of light ran along the carvings like veins filling with blood. Ethan stepped closer, his hand hovering over the glowing surface. "This feels alive," he whispered. Elira nodded slowly. "It is our ancestors built machines that could remember." The markings on the door shifted and rearranged themselves into words. A voice echoed through the chamber. "Old, mechanical, almost human. Genetic vault access detected. Welcome back, human." Ethan and Elira stared at each other in shock. The gate split down the middle with a hiss of air and light, revealing a vast underground world. Rows of glass pods stretched as far as the eye could see, each one filled with swirling silver mist. In the center stood a massive crystal sphere pulsing slowly like a heart. "This is Project Genesis," Elira whispered, "the origin of us all." They walked forward carefully, the sound of their steps echoing. Ethan touched one of the pods and saw shadows of people inside, men and women frozen in time. "They're human," he said softly. Elira's voice trembled. "No, they're Illystran, or maybe both." A panel lit up beside them showing an ancient log. It read, "Experiment A12, cross-hybridization success rate 98%. Ethan's mind raced. "Your ancestors didn't come from Illystra," he said slowly. "They came from Earth." Elira's eyes widened. "So we are human," she whispered, "just changed by time and fear." Before they could say more, a sharp alarm echoed through the vault. Red light flared. Ethan turned toward the gate. "They found us," he said. Elira drew her crystal blade, her expression hardening. The circle of purity had tracked them down. Vara entered with her followers, their white cloaks glowing in the crimson light. "You have opened the forbidden gate," she said. "You have doomed us all." Elira stepped forward, her sword raised. "No, Vara, you doomed us 2 centuries ago when you killed our future." Vara's eyes burned with hatred. "Men brought violence and desire. We brought order and peace. You would throw it away for a stranger." Ethan moved beside Elira, his voice calm but strong. "I didn't come to take your world. I came to give it back what it lost." For a moment, the chamber was silent, except for the heartbeat of the crystal core. Then Vara raised her hand, and the priest attacked. Beams of light cut through the air, shattering pods and filling the room with steam. Ethan grabbed Elira and pulled her behind a fallen pillar. She pressed a control on her wrist and activated the defense field of the vault. A wave of blue energy rolled across the floor like water, throwing the priest back. But Vara was strong. She stood amid the storm and hurled her weapon toward the crystal core. The impact cracked its surface. Energy spilled out like liquid light. The whole chamber shook. Elira screamed, "No," and leapt forward to block the next strike. Her blade clashed with Vara's, sending a blast of energy through the air. Ethan ran to the control panel and searched desperately for a way to stabilize the core. The screen flashed a warning. Manual override required. Human DNA verification. Without thinking, he placed his hand on the scanner. The crystal core flared bright white, and Illystra itself seemed to breathe. Elira and Vara both stumbled back as the light filled the hall. Holograms of men and women appeared around them, ancient scientists from Earth. A recorded voice spoke. "Project Genesis completed. To preserve humanity beyond Earth, we seeded life across the stars. Illystra is one of our children." The holograms faded, but the truth remained. Vara fell to her knees in shock, her beliefs shattering like glass. Elira stood beside Ethan, the light of the core reflecting in her eyes. "So the Illystrans and humans are one family," she said softly. "And you are the missing half we forgot." Ethan nodded. "But the core is unstable. If it breaks, this world dies." Together, they activated the restoration protocol, their hands linked on the control panel. A wave of light swept through the vault, repairing the cracks and awakening the sleeping pods. Inside them, figures began to move, not dead, not alive yet, but returning. Illystra itself seemed to come back to life. When the light faded, Elira looked at Ethan. "You are not just a visitor," she said. "You are the spark that restarts our world." But Ethan shook his head, his voice low. "Then we must protect it because something out there sent that signal, and it wasn't you." Elira froze. "You mean someone else wanted you here?" Ethan nodded. "Or something else." Far above them in the night sky, beyond Illystra's atmosphere, a massive dark object drifted into view. Its hull was marked with ancient human symbols, and its eyes, red as fire, opened for the first time in 2 centuries. And from the void, a mechanical voice whispered through the stars. "Genesis complete. Next phase, Reclamation initiated. The planet slept beneath a sky that no longer felt safe. The twin moons glowed pale above Illustra, but between them hung a new star, black, vast, and watching. From the Citadel's highest tower, Commander Elira stared upward, the reflection of that dark ship burning in her eyes. Ethan stood beside her, silent, listening to the hum of the awakening world below. Across the surface of Illustra, power returned to cities long dead. Gardens shimmered with light again, and the vaults of Genesis breathed life into forgotten hearts. But hope came hand in hand with fear. Every sensor in the sky screamed one truth. The thing above was not a moon, not a ship of Illustra, not even alien. It was human-made, older than both their worlds combined. Dr. Navarra appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Commander, it's broadcasting on ancient Terran frequencies," she said. Ethan's blood ran cold. "What does it say?" She swallowed hard. "Phase 2, reclamation." Elira turned to Ethan, confusion in her eyes. "Reclamation of what?" He stared at the horizon. "Of everything," he whispered. The air around them seemed to tighten as thunder rolled, though no storm existed. Moments later, the first beam of crimson light struck the ground. Mountains cracked, oceans rippled, and entire fields of glass turned to dust. The ship wasn't attacking cities. It was scanning, harvesting, pulling the genetic data of every living being toward itself. Elira grabbed the railing, her voice fierce. "They're taking our life signatures." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then they're trying to restart something bigger than us." Inside the control chamber, the ancient Genesis core pulsed violently. Dr. Navarra shouted. "It's resonating with the signal. The ship is controlling it." Elira's mind raced. "If they take Genesis, they take the power to recreate or erase us." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we stop them." They launched toward orbit in the Odyssey, the last working human vessel, now modified with Illustran crystal drives. Below them, the planet glowed like a wounded heart. Energy surge building from the ship, Navarra warned. Ethan's hands moved over the controls. "Target the core, not the weapons we disable, not destroy." Elira nodded, her voice steady though her heart trembled. "If we fail, Illustra becomes just another ghost world." As they neared the black monolith, lights flickered across its surface like the eyes of sleeping giants. A voice filled the cabin, deep and mechanical. "Human Unit Ethan Ward, genetic successor identified. Return to the fold." Ethan froze. "It knows my name," he whispered. "It knows my name," he whispered. The voice continued. "Project Genesis requires unification. Humanity must be reclaimed." Elira's hand went to her weapon. "You're not taking him," she said. The ship answered with a flash of red light. The Odyssey shook violently, alarms screaming. Ethan gritted his teeth. "I'm done being property." He fired the pulse cannons directly into the monolith's control array. The blast tore open a wound of molten steel, revealing vast machinery within. Rows of suspended figures, men and women asleep in liquid stasis. Elira's breath caught. "Those are clones," Navarra whispered. "They've been growing new humans for centuries." The monolith's core glowed brighter. Organic resistance detected, initiating assimilation. Mechanical arms unfolded like wings of metal, reaching toward them. Ethan turned to Elira, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Cut the power lines near the heart, the blue ones." She nodded and dove through the wreckage, slicing the glowing conduits with her blade. Each cut sent a shock wave through the structure. Below, the captured clones flickered, their containment fields failing. Ethan accessed the command interface, his fingers flying. Lines of forgotten code appeared. He recognized one phrase, "Override by Prime Human." He placed his palm on the scanner. The system hesitated, then spoke again. Identity confirmed. Prime lineage active. Energy surged from him into the ship, his veins lighting with gold. Elira shouted from across the chamber. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He smiled faintly. ending what my ancestors started. He triggered the sequence. The monolith screamed, a sound that was both machine and human. Across the void, its red lights turned white, then exploded into shards of light that rained like meteors toward the planet. The blast threw them back into the Odyssey, systems flickering, alarms dying. When the noise faded, there was only silence. Illustra shimmered below, untouched, alive. But Ethan lay slumped in his chair, pale and still. Elira rushed to him, pressing her hand to his chest. A faint pulse answered. He opened his eyes weakly. Did we win? She smiled through tears. We survived. Through the viewport, fragments of the destroyed monolith drifted like glowing ash. Each fragment carried within it small spheres of light, descending gently toward the planet. Navarro whispered, "They're seeds." Elira looked at Ethan, realization dawning. Genesis isn't just rebirth, it's evolution. The sky of Illustra filled with falling stars. And somewhere deep within the planet, the core of Genesis pulsed again, stronger than before. For the first time in 2 centuries, the future of humanity and Illustra burned together. One heartbeat, one destiny, one story still unfolding. The dawn that rose over Illustra was not the same sun that had set the night before. Its light felt new, sharper, as if the sky itself had been washed clean after centuries of dust and silence. From every corner of the planet, people looked up in wonder, watching thousands of glowing fragments drifting down through the atmosphere. They called them the seeds of the sky, not knowing yet that each one carried something far more powerful than hope. In the Citadel's recovery chamber, Ethan lay unconscious, his body still glowing faintly from the Genesis energy. Machines hummed softly around him, reading unstable life signs. Commander Elira stood by his bedside, her armor cracked, her eyes tired yet full of fire. She had fought wars, quelled uprisings, led armies, but nothing had ever terrified her more than losing one man. Her hand hovered above his, trembling slightly. "Wake up, human," she whispered. "You still owe me a world." Dr. Navarra entered quietly, holding a small holographic orb in her hands. "Commander," she said, "the seeds have landed." Elira turned. "What are they?" Navarra hesitated, the light of the orb flickering across her face. "Not weapons," she said slowly. "Not exactly life either. They're messages." The orb projected an image above the bed. A glowing figure formed from light and static. Its voice was calm, ancient, and familiar. "If you are hearing this, the reclamation failed. Humanity has evolved beyond its creators." The figure looked almost human, but its eyes were made of code and memory. "We are the architects, the ones who built Genesis, the ones who feared extinction, but now we see survival is not control, it is change." The message ended with coordinates deep beneath Illustra's northern pole. Elira's jaw tightened. "So there's more," she said. Navarre nodded. "Another chamber, older than the first, maybe even the true Genesis core." At that moment, Ethan stirred. His eyes opened slowly, catching the shimmer of the hologram before it vanished. His voice was weak, but steady. "Then we're not done yet." Elira smiled in relief. "You nearly died," she said. He gave a tired grin. "I've done that before." Within hours, the Odyssey lifted off again, carrying the last 3 souls who understood what was coming. Ethan, Elira, and Navarra. The planet below sparkled with strange new energy. Forests that had been dead for centuries began to bloom. Oceans glowed at night, and creatures thought extinct began to stir from slumber. But among the miracles, shadows grew too, strange shapes moving in a mist, echoes of forgotten DNA taking form. When the Odyssey reached the polar wastelands, they saw it. A canyon split open by light, revealing a staircase descending into infinity. Elira's breath caught. "The heart of Genesis," she whispered. They entered the depths, the walls glowing with faint symbols written in both Terran and Illustran script. At the bottom lay a vast sphere of dark glass, pulsing slowly like a sleeping god. Ethan approached cautiously. "Genesis Core, open protocol," he said. The sphere responded instantly. "Access granted. Prime human confirmed." A beam of light struck him, lifting him from the ground. His body floated in midair, surrounded by symbols that moved like living data. Elira shouted his name, but her voice was drowned by the hum of power. Visions filled Ethan's mind. Earth burning, colonies falling, the architect creating a Lystra as humanity's second chance. He saw their fear, their pride, their failure. And then he saw something worse, a fragment of the future. Humanity reborn again and again until it became something no longer human at all. A voice whispered inside his skull. "You are the key, but keys can lock or unlock." He landed hard, gasping. Elira ran to him, catching him before he fell. "What did you see?" she asked. He looked into her eyes, his voice shaking. "Genesis isn't just a creation engine," he said. "It's a test. It learns, it decides who deserves to exist." Navarra's face went pale. "You mean it's judging us?" Ethan nodded slowly. "And it's waking up right now." The ground rumbled beneath their feet, the black sphere splitting open like a cocoon. From within emerged figures, not human, not a Lystran, but something between, glowing with veins of light. They spoke in a chorus of many voices. "We are the children of Genesis, born from your union, guardians of balance." Elira drew her weapon. "Guardians or conquerors?" They smiled faintly. "That depends on you." The chamber filled with blinding light, and a surge of energy rushed outward. On the surface, the seeds that had fallen began to hatch, spreading waves of new life. Forests, oceans, creatures, even new cities built from living matter. Lystra was being remade, not by machines, but by living evolution itself. As the light faded, Ethan and Elira stood side by side, watching a new dawn rise inside the hollow core. He whispered, "Maybe Genesis wasn't meant to destroy or save. Maybe it just wanted us to remember what we are." Elira turned to him, a faint smile touching her lips. "And what's that?" He looked at the growing light. "Human," he said, "and still learning." But far beyond Lystra's new sky, deep in the cold void, another signal awakened. One not from the architects or Genesis, but from something older, something that had watched all of creation rise and fall. "Observation complete," the voice said. "Next world, Terra Prime." The stars pulsed once, as if answering, and went silent again. The new Lystra glowed like a newborn star. Forests shimmered with silver leaves. Rivers whispered songs older than the sky. Children of Genesis walked among the Lystrans, learning, growing, blending. But somewhere deep in the silence beyond the moons, a pulse trembled through the void. A heartbeat not of life, but of memory. Ethan sat alone on the balcony of the rebuilt Sky Citadel, staring at the stars that refused to sleep. Ever since the awakening of Genesis, his dreams were no longer his own. He saw flashes of places he had never been. Mountains of red dust, oceans frozen under glass, towers buried in ash. And one word echoing again and again inside his mind. Terra Prime. Elira joined him quietly, her silver armor reflecting the light of two suns. "You're seeing it again, aren't you?" she asked softly. He nodded slowly. "It's not just a vision," he said. "It's a call." She frowned. "From where?" He turned to her, his voice barely a whisper. "From Earth, or what's left of it." Before she could answer, the sky cracked open. A beam of white light sliced through the night, piercing straight into the Genesis core at the planet's heart. The ground shook, the air screamed, and the newborn world trembled. Dr. Navarra's voice came through the comms, panicked. "Commander, a signal is hijacking Genesis. Origin point unknown. Frequency matches Ethan's genetic signature." Elira's blood ran cold. "What does it want?" Navarra hesitated. "It's summoning him." Within hours, they launched again in the Odyssey, following the beam that reached beyond known space. Through wormholes and black storms they flew, each jump pulling them closer to the edge of time itself, until finally they saw it, a dead planet drifting in the ashes of a dying sun. Its surface was scorched, its oceans gone, yet faint lights flickered beneath its crust. Ethan felt a pressure inside his skull, a whisper calling him home. They landed in silence, the air heavy with the dust of forgotten centuries. Ruins of steel and stone stretched across the horizon, remnants of cities once called human. At the center of the wasteland stood a black spire, cracked but alive. Etched into its side were the same words that haunted his dreams. Project Genesis, Phase 0. Elira's voice trembled. So this is where it began. Ethan stepped forward, touching the spire. The world around them flickered and shifted. Images filled the air, not holograms but living memories. Men and women in white suits, building the first Genesis cores. Their leader, a woman with eyes like his own, spoke to the camera. If we fail, the stars will carry our children, but they must never return here. The illusion ended, leaving only silence. Ethan's hand shook. They didn't die, he whispered. They sealed Earth, made it a beacon to call us back when the time was right. Elira looked around the dead planet, her voice breaking. And now it's calling because the cycle is complete. The spire began to hum, lights flaring across its surface. A voice thundered through the wasteland. Not mechanical, but something older. Humanity, you have learned to create, to destroy, to love again. Now choose what you will become. The ground split, revealing a core of pure energy beneath their feet. Inside it floated millions of dormant capsules, seeds of new worlds waiting to be born. Navarra's readings went wild. It's offering us a choice, she said, to spread again or to stay and evolve here. Ethan looked at Elira. Her eyes shimmered with both fear and wonder. What will you choose, human? She asked. He took her hand gently. Not human, he said. Not Alistran, something better. Together they placed their palms against the spire. The planet pulsed once, twice, then erupted in a wave of golden light that rippled through the galaxy. Every Genesis core across the stars awoke, sinking into one heartbeat, one consciousness. The architects, the Alistrans, and humanity, all their legacies merging into something new. When the light faded, Terra Prime was no longer a wasteland. Oceans returned, forests grew, and in the sky 2 moons shone, the mark of Alistra's blood joining Earth's. Ethan and Elira stood at the edge of a reborn world, their fingers entwined, their shadows stretching far into the dawn. He looked up and whispered. Genesis wasn't a weapon or a test. It was a bridge. She smiled softly, and we finally crossed it. Far above them, the stars flickered one by one, forming a pattern, a symbol of unity glowing brighter with every heartbeat. And from somewhere deep in the cosmos, a final message echoed across all creation. The age of division is over. The age of humanity reborn begins.